Compass Mining. Curtis has really made it his mission to host a technical mining operations meetup to not only better our local community, but also give back to the greater industry as well. So if we could give a quick round of hands for Compass. Tonight, we'll be talking about mining hardware, something I'm personally interested in learning more about. We have a great panel, 2 space members that are very near and dear to our heart, Tatum Turnup and Eli. You don't have to clap for them. With that, Curtis, take it away.
Yeah, I'll do it. There's no switch. It doesn't feel like it's magnifier. This could just be picked up for the online viewers. Guys, thank you for being here. Like, you know, Wyatt said, hey, clap it up for Curtis or Compass. Our logo's not on that for a very specific reason. This is a passion of mine, but we're building this meetup for the Bitcoin mining community. This isn't a commercial for Compass. This is because we are passionate Bitcoin miners, and there was no one out there serving the real miners, the guys who really know how to plug in 1,000 machines or move 1,000 machines or manufacture 1,000 machines. So that's the reason we're here. And I'm looking at the board over there. There's member 79. If we can find Tyler and get me wrapped up. I personally committed to being an individual member today. Like I live in Kansas. I travel out for this. What you guys have here in your own backyard in Denver is special. It is one of a kind. So thank you for being here. We will get right into the programming. We'll also do a good job of introducing our guests. I brought a few freemiums, some giveaways today that we'll share later in the day. So I think we'll just go ahead and get started and see what the clicker button has in store for us. Our agenda: welcome and announcements. I like to talk about hot mining jobs. Jobs are passionate to me, so helping you find a role is something that's important to me. So there's actually several conversations tonight where people were thinking, hey, what sort of things could I do? So I align with that. And then the technical discussions, we'll talk about getting to know your hardware, control boards and power compatibility, and diagnostics and log previews. Before I get into the hot mining jobs is when I would like to take a moment and introduce my guests. These gentlemen are both friends of mine. I've gotten to know Tatum and Eli very well. The first time I sit down across the table from Eli, I realized how lucky I was to be working in industry with people smarter than me. And now I'm privileged to be able to ask him to come here and share the stage with Tatum and I tonight. Tatum has become a close personal friend. He's a member of the space. He's also a very unique, one-of-a-kind person. And if you don't have a chance to be friends with powerful men who know who they are, Tatum is a good person to introduce yourself and get to know. So, gentlemen, you
did really good. Thank you, Curtis.
All right. Hey, later we're going to talk about being single and dating because we need to share some love with Tatum, and I've got some words on that. If we yeah.
Holy.
All right. Hey, before we digress too much, because we do have important things we want to talk about tonight. Eli, would you go first? Would you mind introducing yourself to the benefit of the crowd, give a little bit of your background, but also take a moment and talk about Novomod. I think that's going to be a brand and a logo that not too many people are familiar with. It's really just getting started. So, Eli, would you please introduce yourself?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Curtis. My name is Eli Hendrickson. I am the facility manager for Novomod. It's an enterprise-level repair startup that we've launched here recently. And essentially the idea is we're kind of able to turn boards around way faster than your average shop would be able to do. And we're more geared towards like enterprise-level customers, people that need 2,000 or 3,000 machines turned around in like a couple of months' time. Like we're sort of the people for that. So I started the first service center for Compass Mining in Oklahoma in 2022. Yeah, then we had the satellite one in Washington. But then we went on to transplant that here to Denver and build 3 separate iterations of it. So, Tatum?
Hey, I'm Tatum. I'm a field deployment technician for Compass. I'm based here in Denver, but travel to different facilities for deployments, repairs, anything that we manage and operate. I'm boots on the ground. I actually flew back in from Iowa today from doing some work out there for a facility we're getting ready to launch. So yeah, I'm hands-on with the equipment day in, day out, and I'm happy to talk to y'all about it.
Are you forklift certified?
I am forklift certified, yes. Thank you. Thank you.
That's good stuff. I mean, a couple things that I heard there from Tatum is that, like, I just love it. He flew in from Iowa to make sure to be here today. He knew that he was leading this conversation, was going to be up. We're launching our first wholly owned site in Iowa. It's 8 megawatts. It's growing to 38 megawatts. Like, Bitcoin mining is hard, and it takes real people who know how to do it, and Tatum's one of those guys. I'm going to flip the screen for the first job, but before we get too far away, let's talk one more second about Tatum, all right? This is a mostly male-dominated audience. I'm thankful for the ladies that are here, but we all have heard the story about how the hot girl doesn't know how hot she is, right? That's who I think Tatum is. Tatum does not know how attractive and valuable he is, and let's make sure we always get a chance to talk about him. I've got three jobs just to highlight real fast, and we'll get right into tonight's programming. This is a job with Bitdeer. Bitdeer's a big deal. They've just acquired their first power plant. They're a manufacturer of hardware. They're a miner. They own power plants now. They've got a job in Texas. They're hiring an account manager. If you, I had a chance to talk to Will earlier. When I saw account manager, I thought of accountant. If you do something now in your current field and you just can't wait to work in Bitcoin, what you do now currently is applicable in Bitcoin. So if you sweep floors, we need floors swept. If you cook steak, we need steak swept. Right? All right, I'm moving on. Riot is hiring in Corsicana, Texas, a minor maintenance technician. Riot is they have headquarters here outside of Colorado. They're a large employer in across the globe in Bitcoin mining. And the last one I have is with Marathon. I don't always have the big miners. I try to find some things. If Compass has an opening, I'll put it up there. If Novomod's got an opening, I'll put it up there. But Mara is hiring for a project manager in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 63 to 103K, right? So I don't know what you're earning, where you enter, but that's a real job. There's something that for you to do there in Bitcoin mining. It's pretty, I would say, from my advice, if you're looking to work in Bitcoin mining, LinkedIn's where I would start. I would search for the jobs. I would look for the companies that are hiring and then research about those companies. So let's get, I'm still looking at something. I've got one more slide to show you. I want to promote an event that's coming up in next week here at the space. So Tyler and the benefactors of the space are hosting a one-of-a-kind conference called Heat Punk. It's all about heat repurposing for Bitcoin mining. I saw an article that really caught my attention, so I made a post out of it. And what I want to show you down here at the bottom is 22,000 impressions. Right? That if you guys are on LinkedIn, that is a massive piece of content. And my point is that people love this topic. So right here in your own backyard, next Friday and Saturday, Heat Punk, dedicated to hash rate heating. Mining doesn't have to be centralized, and home hashing is for everyone. There's several sponsors. We're sponsoring because we believe in it. It's a massive passion of mine. So there we go. That's enough for me. Tatum, you and I worked together. Eli was busy. We kind of built the topics in the agenda. So I think at this point, I'm happy to just kind of hand the conversation over to you. We got a handful of slides to move through, but let's just start the conversation. We'll get to know your hardware, expected failure rates. How about you, John?
Yeah, so we wanted to gear this discussion around kind of expectations for failures with mining hardware, whether it's a handful of ASIC miners in your house that you're using as heaters, or you have a multi-megawatt facility. They're not perfect machines, unfortunately, and you will face failures in some degree, and that's what us guys do. We do repairs, but we want to talk about kind of what to expect if you are getting into mining. Like I said, whether it just home mining or you're setting up a facility. Eli probably has more numbers. What, as far as if I were to order a batch of miners for a facility, say, in the couple hundreds of range, what's the expected failure rate as far as DOA, dead on arrival, that I should expect?
That's actually kind of a controversial topic. It really depends on who you ask. There were some batches that we saw that had as high as a 40% DOA rate, depending on the year. The on-paper answer is 4%, technically speaking, but it really just wildly varies by model, which factory produced the machine, things like that. So, you get some batches where there's just absolutely nothing wrong with it, and then some where it's so bad that you've got to contact the manufacturer. So, kind of a hard question to answer.
So one out of 25 miners in a general 1 out of 25 miners, 4% are going to fail, be dead on arrival.
That's what the on paper number is supposed to be, but we've seen that doesn't come into practice too often. Yeah.
So with that batch of the 40% that you mentioned, which I feel like I know exactly which miners you're talking about, what's the protocol whenever you fire up a facility and you realize that all of these miners have problems? Because a lot of those, if they have that high of a DOA rate, it's usually going to be on the board level. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah. And part of it, it just depends on how big of a player you are, really. Like if you're somebody that has 1 megawatt worth of equipment, you're not going to sway the manufacturer very much. If you're someone that has 400 megawatts and they also happen to be affected by the same shipment that you got, then you just have to hope that they lobby well enough to recall it, which almost never happens. But yeah.
So on the actual, let's actually throw out some definitions first, because the main thing we're wanting to talk about is bolt-on repairs. Bolt-on repairs are going to be what I like to pseudo call hot swaps. They're fan repairs, control board repairs, PSU repairs, not necessarily repairs, replacements. Let me say replacements. And so that's what we're mainly going to be talking about. So if we say bolt-on, we're talking about one of those 3 things as opposed to actual board level interruptions with the actual ASIC chips.
So bolt-on repairs are items that commonly fail, but that you're easily able to swap in the field.
Yes.
No technical skills needed. You unplug a fan, you 4 screws, you plug in a new fan.
As long as you understand what you're looking for, which we're going to get to with the identifications, then anyone in this room can do a bolt-on replacement. So I don't know how many DOA bolt-ons I've seen, not very many. Is that something that you've seen regularly, or is it more on the board side that you have to worry about as far as DOAs?
It is really uncommon, but you're talking about a manufacturing defect, so really it could be anything. I've seen entire batches of machines shipped with DOA PSUs, like the APW 12, 14, 17 notoriously was really bad in like 2022. And I didn't believe the metrics. Like they tell me this is the issue. I was like, oh, you're just doing it wrong. And I had them send everything to me, and I measured all the voltage outputs, and I was like, oh, man, this is like 15 volts. Like, it's just not going to work. So, it's kind of hard to narrow it down like that.
Yeah, and it's also, like, if you get a miner to heat your house and you plug it in and one of the fans isn't working, the miner's not going to hash because it's going to notice that the fan is not working, but that's not the end of the world. Honestly, that's probably the best defect that you could ask for. But there are also very easy ways to accumulate different PSUs, different control boards. We'll go into the compatibility of each of those categories too. But if your miner stops working, it's not the end of the world. It is most likely a very easy fix, unless it's not, and then you have to call Eli. So,
hey, yeah, I'm not too knowledgeable on how to describe this, but I have the general sense that because we run a lot of machines, we were able to figure out that that if you watched fan speeds from a remote circumstance, you could monitor it, that when fans started to speed up, when there wasn't a temperature cycle spike, that we were able to identify that fan was then likely to fail. Do you guys have any history of that? Were you familiar with that, with our discovery of that?
Yeah, there's a lot of correlations you can draw like that. I typically tend to just fix stuff when it breaks down. You can definitely see it coming, but I kind of look at it and go, okay, well, that's my next problem. But yeah, there are indicators a lot of times of like certain failures that are about to happen. It's just when you're a field technician, most of the time you're focused on the immediate fire because everything's kind of a priority.
Yeah, and inside of each miner log, you'll be able to see, mainly thinking on amp miners, the first thing that they will check for is the fans to make sure that all 4 of them are at the rate that they need to be. And if it's not, then it'll tell you, hey, fan 3 is spinning at 500 RPM, that's not going to be sustainable. And then if it says that it's not in that range, it won't hash until you swap that fan. And then there's also some things where you'll find errors where it says that it's going 14,000 RPM, which I don't know if you can visualize that, but that's lethal. It's not actually going 14,000 RPM. That's some sort of under the hood issue, but that you typically just need to swap that fan out too. But yeah, those type of things are expected, and especially fans. I would say fans are probably the most common things to replace on a miner. Would you say?
Probably so. I mean, it could have to do something with like prevalence-induced concept change, where the more you see it, the more obvious it is.
Right.
Because that's sort of the low-hanging fruit that we get to first. So,
And also, you can protect your miner from needing more frequent fan repairs too, by just keeping it in a good environment. So,
yeah, they like to be clean.
yeah, for sure. Make sure you're filtering out that intake for sure.
You started talking about manufacturer's defects because of DOA, and it made me want to ask a question that I'm just not familiar with. When you're racking a new facility and you're using brand new equipment, are you generally individually testing each machine for functionality first, or are you plugging them all in and then finding out that some of them aren't working?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, what typically we do is whenever we energize a facility, we will spend the immediate thing that we do after energization is make sure that we are recording each miner. Every miner is found, and we can access each miner. From there, we will have some people make the site map, and so it's easier to identify where the problems are. Then we'll use some sort of miner management software to see, this one's not hashing, this one's not hashing, this one's not hashing. And we'll individually go into those, and the idea is that you have more hashing that are not hashing, so it's not too big of a deal. But we'll be able to go into those and in the logs see what's wrong with each one of them. Sometimes when you turn a facility on, you'll be able to see fans that aren't moving, and you'll already know, okay, I need to switch those out. One of the main examples I'm thinking about is one of our facilities in Oklahoma last year. We did 473 fan replacements in the span of about 2 weeks, and for reference, that is exactly half of a truck bed. Because we wanted to see how much it would fill up, and it was half a truck bed.
Because Tatum is a social media darling, he posted a nice photo of him sprawled out on the back of this
I was leaned up
truck bed.
against it, okay? I looked a little more studious, but yeah, I did post that picture. It was pretty cool. But what now? Anyway, next topic.
Hey, before we keep going down, and I actually want to prepare the audience for the opportunity to ask some questions. We feel like we need to be able to bring good programming and be prepared to discuss. But last month, there was someone who showed up at the meetup. They owned an oil and gas resource. They discovered that there was a Bitcoin mining meetup right here, and they came here to learn. So if you're here to learn, there's a bunch of experts around you. If you, these gentlemen joined, they're looking at how can we deploy our excess electrons we're generating with solar. There are experts here. So when we get kind of through what we want to make sure we talk about, if you've got something that you want to learn about tonight, let us try to swing a bat at it. Before I get off of the manufacturers and where I was, I don't want to put him on blast, but I want to thank my friend Christopher in the front row for joining. Christopher leads business development for Canaan. They're one of the largest manufacturers of Bitcoin ASIC hardware. They are also AI chip innovators. They manufacture containers. They're a publicly traded company, and right here in Denver, showing up at the front row of this meetup is Christopher. Thank you very much for being here. Yeah, wow, look at that. I just wanted to make sure to share the love the same way we gave to Tyler. I want to comment on Wyatt and yours, both very handsome haircuts. So you guys are something else. Hey, I feel like we touched base on expected failure rates, but then maintenance strategies. Maybe we talked about it. Eli, you're like, yeah, I don't monitor fan speeds. I just fixed stuff when it was broken. But I do think that we had a little bit more complex thought spurred out. So if I can just use maintenance strategies, comparing proactive versus reactive, was there more that we wanted to say?
A lot of it is going to be reactive. It's unfortunately, there's not too entirely much that you can do to be proactive about repairs and replacements. Most of it's going to be, oh, this miner's not hashing. Let's see what's going on with it. And like I said earlier, the environment is going to be probably the biggest control factor that you can adjust to prevent stuff like that, but it's still going to happen regardless. So most all of maintenance is going to be, as far as the hardware actual miner level, is going to be reactive, but there are definitely some proactive maintenance things you can do, such as scheduled filter maintenance, where, you know, there in one of our facilities we're planning on taking a couple days to do while they're doing something else, so we can replace all the filters and stuff, because that in and of itself is just a humongous task. But as far as everything else, it's a lot of, okay, this machine's not working, let me figure out why. Not what can I do to prevent this machine from stopping working, because once it starts working, it's going to pretty much keep working until some outside force is going to make it stop.
I have a small tendency to exaggerate with large numbers. I don't mean to do this, but here's a comparison that I heard, and I'll use the numbers, is that your home furnace at home, when you put that air filter in it, if the amount of air that's moving through that compared to what moves through a Bitcoin mine, it would take your home furnace 140 years in order to pull through as much air as pulls through in one day in a Bitcoin mine. Bitcoin mines move a tremendous amount of air through them, and that's why filtration is so important. One of the things that I feel like I heard there, I want to segue to a question that was raised in the audience earlier, and I want to ask you, Eli. I think Tatum was involved in the conversation. When you look at exceptionally high altitude, how is high altitude likely to impact miner operations? Do you have any experience? I don't want to make you make something up, but any thoughts around operating miners at exceptionally high altitude?
I think some of the temperature ranges can change just a little bit in terms of the lower and upper bounds that they operate at, but I haven't really seen too much practically different in terms of altitude. Other factors like humidity, or, you know,
I would say humidity might be the biggest one.
yeah, particulates in the air. Like, you know, your site may not have a lot of dust in it, but like, say you're doing a 5 megawatt expansion or something, there's a lot of big trucks coming past your containers, it's going to clog up the filters a lot faster. So, I mean, there are some environmental factors for sure, but I haven't really seen altitude affect it too much.
Yeah, I think we clearly have the indication that temperature matters, but to that direct question that was raised earlier, we don't think altitude has a tendency. I do think that we have another slide with a few photos where we get a little deeper into bolt-on repairs. So let's see if the magic clicker is working there. Was
took
there?
these photos, by the way.
Say it again, Tatum.
I took these photos.
So Tatum, your moment to ham it up was at the beginning of the meetup. Okay. All business now, brother. Hey, what are we looking at? Like, let's spend at least a couple minutes. These are some of the most common parts. It was one of the biggest things that we were going to talk about. What are we looking at? For the benefit of the audience.
So I'll first give the basic, and then Eli can go into the Eli stuff. He's smarter than me. But up first, we have a control board. I can't remember what type this is. It's a Xilinx. It's not AM Logic. That's a micro SD. Huh, I knew something Eli didn't. No, it's just we can't see it. But this is a typical control board for an S19 model. Each miner will have a different specific type of control board. There's a lot of different compatibility that goes into it versus what it can take, what it's supposed to take, what you can load onto it, et cetera. Eli can talk more about that. This is a standard PSU. This is one of our universal PSUs for S19 models, where when we say universal, the power supply is an APW 12-12-15, but for various models, there's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, I think, which is ridiculous. What's compatible with what? Who knows? We don't even know. Not really. There's kind of an idea, but there's a dial on the top where you can actually adjust it to change the versions. Don't ask me how that works. I have no idea, but it's great because you don't have to try on 5 different PSUs before one works. And then, of course, over here we just have a fan. This is a 120 millimeter fan, which is for all of your S19 and the base model S21 fans. And then 140 millimeters are What's Minor, S21, XP, and Pros. And I feel really bad that the Canon guy's sitting right there, and I can't tell you which ones go on the Avalons, but that one probably does, maybe. But yeah, these are the 3 individual parts that we talk about when we say bolt-on. So talk about control boards. What models of control boards are different for each minor model?
Well, I think a lot of it just has to do with what they have laying around, what they're able to get from each supplier for each run and whatever. But different models like the S19 series are going to have different control boards. You've got the BeagleBone control board. You've got the Xilinx series. What really matters to the S19s is just matching the chipsets in the model, apart from like the faceplate fitment. Because let's say that like the XP, they may make like 3 different control boards for it, but you've got to have the SD recovery files to get a new control board for it to work, and those aren't available to the public anymore. So you'd have to know which one to go for, per chipset. And then you got to make sure it actually fits. So you can. I've made an XP work off of an S19A control board before. The thing is, it just doesn't fit so good. Control boards for control boards for Antminers can be really tricky. You can't just plug and play them. It has to have a very specific configuration done a certain way. And then you have some others like Canon or What's Minor. It's basically just model or control board specific is the firmware. So there's like 2 or 3 files you have to deal with. They come in different updates. But
I would say if you're wanting to do a control board replacement, definitely consult with someone, because even me in the field, I sometimes will get switched up. I have to consult Eli sometimes because it is very tricky. One thing you can do, say that it's also kind of hard to figure out. There's not a direct something in the log that will tell you that your control board needs replacing. But if you figure out that it is a control board that needs replacing, you can look on the control board, and there should be a label that has a C and then a number like C83, C76, C55, something like that. That'll give you pretty much exactly what model you would need. But you can always hit me up. If you're at the space, you know how to get in touch with me. But definitely don't just go buying a control board because it says control board. Do a little bit of consulting, but it's pretty easy to match it up based on the C code that's on top of it.
Yeah. It should be noted that like replacing control boards is going to void your warranty more than likely if you still have one. So you don't just want to go doing that. And something else from a miner management perspective that you need to be aware of is if you go switching control boards and you work for something that's at scale, it's going to change the MAC address because the physical ID is tied to the NIC on that particular control board. So if you go switching a control board on something you don't tell anybody, annotate it or whatever, they're not really going to know in their sitemap what in the world is in that slot.
Yeah, that is a good point. Everything stays the same until you switch the control board, and then you have a new MAC address. But in most cases, that doesn't matter too much, but at scale, that will kind of affect if it'll say like there's a disabled miner or something, but it's just not configured properly or something like that.
Yeah, you don't really want to just go doing stuff.
Yeah. And on the PSUs, can you enlighten me, because I still don't understand, what is the difference between all of the 12, 12, 15 versions, and why are some compatible with others, and how does the universal solve that? And,
Well, that's what the funny thing about it is when I first got into this, it was just like the V1.2. There really wasn't like, some of these control boards didn't exist, some of these PSU configurations didn't exist, and they just started getting heavier and heavier in terms of like what can work with what. But basically what it is the version D, E, and F power supplies are switching power supplies, and ordinarily you're going to see those on aluminum hash boards that aren't like fiberglass. And generally, it's models without PICs. If a model doesn't have a PIC, typically it can't run independently unless it has a custom operating system behind it, which will also void your warranty. But so the DEF power supplies are going to be switching ones, and those are typically backwards compatible with any models that work for A, B, and C. So the way they put it on paper is that DEF works with ABC, but not vice versa. It doesn't always work out that way. I mean, sometimes you see a model that ships with a C and it just only wants a C. And then for the life of you can't get a version C to work on anything else. So
that happens far too often. And sorry, I wanted to highlight one thing that he said about the picks. Does anyone know what a pick is? It is a peripheral. Is it peripheral? Okay. Wait, what'd you say?
The peripheral interface controller.
Okay. And so the dual-sided PCB boards, the ones that are green on both sides, those typically have them on Antminers. And if they're aluminum back, which green on one side, silver on the other, they don't. All that means is that the aluminum ones with no pick, Brains actually just posted something about this today, which I was like, oh, someone else is talking about it. If they don't have a pick and a board goes down, the whole machine goes down. But if they do have a pick, like the dual-sided PCB ones, one board goes down, they can still hash on the other two. It's not optimal, but that is something to note for operations overall.
So I'm going to use a couple anecdotes, and then I would be interested in a question before we segue to our next topic. Before I maybe tell a short story, another one of the audience members today was I'm looking to plug in some miners in their school as a learning topic for the youth in class. Like if you're new to Bitcoin mining and you're up here, you got to know what a pick is, right? And you hear 4% fail. If you're wanting to experiment with Bitcoin mining, you're going to plug something into your house. Maybe you're not operating at scale. Like, how do you get started? Where do you get a miner? Like, how do you not electrocute yourself? A brief cursory on, I want to go from zero to one Bitcoining. Like, what's the easiest way to get started? I'm going to do something. Eli?
Well, I think one of the easiest ways you get going is like at that level would be the Antminer S9. It's kind of a tank, runs on 120 volt power. Basically, it's just an easy APW3 power supply. You plug it into anything. Runs on 242 if you really want to go that route. But that'd be the easiest way to sort of learn, I think, the fundamentals of it. You could get a BitX or whatever, but S9s are pretty cheap.
When you hear the variety of models and this control board, that control board, this power supply, I rudimentary think that Ford builds Ford trucks, right? So if you buy a Ford truck, Ford built it, Chevy built the Chevys. But in Bitcoin mining hardware manufacturing, that's not usually the case. One of the manufacturers will put their name on it, and you think it was made by the manufacturer, but it was actually made by a contract manufacturer shop where they built it for them. And that's why you can have a variety of different hardware installed on each one. Before I look for a question, and it's okay if we don't have one, we have plenty more content, I want to point out another friend who's in the audience. Maybe I didn't call him out first because I'm jealous. He's got a big full head of hair. He's standing in the back there. Adam from Upstream Data. Adam lives right here in Denver. He is probably one of the most famous Bitcoiners on Twitter. And in fact, he's known as Denver Bitcoin. I live in Kansas City. One of my earliest Bitcoin meetups that I ever attended, Adam was speaking at, and I was blown away. He taught me something in that first meeting, is that Bitcoin was going to redefine the value of a kilowatt hour, that our electricity companies were lying to us. It was all subsidized, and that Bitcoin mining was going to redefine the value of a kilowatt hour. Adam, it's really my pleasure that you've joined us here tonight. Look at that. Chris wants to give you a hand. Let's do it. Yeah. Hey, before we hit the next slide, happy to segue for a question just because we saw how valuable that was last month. I did try to address a couple of the issues that I heard in the audience. Any bangers of a question before we move on? Christopher.
Real quick question. Since you're talking about control boards, what's your experience been with, or do you have any thoughts on third-party control boards when they switch them out? There's a company that makes it with a certain result, so you change the machine. I've heard a lot about it, but you've seen what it makes.
I'm kind of biased when it comes to this. So I don't know that my opinion is entirely fair. But for me, I mean, let's say you have a stock control board that you can put custom firmware on, as well as the stock firmware image, right? So with a custom control board, you don't have that functionality. It only runs that, and you can't. It doesn't just let you flash the image back to it if it doesn't work. So I mean, I don't understand why in the world you'd want to swap out a whole container worth of control boards to get something you can push with like a dashboard.
I'm hoping
But
that
that's
one
just
day.
an opinion.
I'm hoping that one day it does make sense because I think that that's a great. I mean that's breaking down the barriers of the oligopoly that is Bitcoin mining right now, where you can have Brains made their control board, and of course you would only be able to run Brains on that control board, and so for a lot of people at scale that doesn't make sense. But I feel like once there is a reason for me to want to put a third-party control board in a miner, it's gonna take off immediately. It's just the idea that you can do third-party firmware on a stock control board kind of doesn't make any sense to go third-party. Now, I will say the black control board that Brains released looks sick. I mean, that's just awesome. Everything is green, but Brains did good with their branding there. But the third-party firmware, I think, is going to be here for a while. At least I think, personal opinion.
Tyler, we heard Brains come a few times. If I remember right, Brains is co-sponsoring the Heat Punk event that's coming up next week. And then I was also very excited to see you in Nashville 2 weeks ago with the book that you co-authored, apparently with Brains. So is that all right? If you come to Heat Punk, you're going to be able to see and meet the Brains team?
Yes, and we'll have 3 copies of the book for everyone. All about
Are you serious? I just bought mine.
Hey, in the third row, you also had a question, please.
Yeah, just a quick question. How long does the mining unit last at total use?
It's a really, really good question, actually.
It's supposed to be 3 to 5 years. Once again, it depends on model, run, environment, lots and lots of things, and your sample size. So, I mean, if you were to just buy one brand new and have it running in your house, I mean, you could probably expect the 3 to 5 years. You're going to have issues in between. You're going to have fans go out or whatever, but that's supposed to be the service life. I'd probably put it closer to 2.5 industrially.
It also depends, like you said, with the models. Like S9, a ton of S9s still today are working just fine. But then some S19 XPs that came out just a few years ago are unrepairable because they were just they were a new era of board design. But that's it's really good to think of how, like, your environment, the smaller the scale, longer the life, I think, would be a good kind of metric.
Eric, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, so how aligned is the actual deprecation of the machine with its depreciation? How economic is it, or how long do you expect to actually be running a miner before you try to salvage it or do that?
That's something that's ever changing because the way that Bitcoin cycles work in mining is that, at least from a very overview, there's a hash rate part of the cycle, then there's an efficiency part of the cycle. Right now, I think we're at the hash rate part of the cycle where it's like, I don't care what it is, we need to get hash rate online because we're printing money with these things. But then when Bitcoin starts dipping down, it's like, okay, we need to spend the least amount of money on electricity to get the most Bitcoin. Machines are coming out all the time that are changing what you should run for what you're wanting to do. And I talked about this with Adam a while back on a podcast I never released because I'm an idiot and recorded in the wrong format. But different miners have different values for what their machine. Like some people, while people are swarming to buy the latest and greatest S21 XP, are still finding their value in S19J Pros because of their power structure or something like that. Maybe they might swap them out for newer generations later on. Maybe some miners are just hanging back a generation or two because that's what's economically smart for them. But it is very, very all over the place. It fluctuates near daily, I think. And Adam, if you wanted to add on to that, I feel like he would.
I actually had a question. What do you guys think for larger miners? What do you think is more painful, more costly? Do you think it's maintenance or depreciation?
I'm gonna jump in just so that we're aware that it isn't just this live audience that we've got right here. There's actually hundreds of people that tune in online via the Spaces online feed. So I'll benefit for the online audience. The question was, at large scale, what's more painful to the large scale miner? Is it maintenance or depreciation, gentlemen?
It's a tough one. I immediately want to say maintenance because you're going to have more maintenance before it's a smart decision to upgrade your miner, in my opinion. I could be wrong about that, but at a scale, individually picking those different problems is going to be, there's no like, it's not like, oh, this container of 360 miners just keeps having problems pop up and we can upgrade them all to the newest generation miners and all those problems disappear. It's more of those problems are still going to be there. Maybe they're going to be a little different. Maybe the rates are going to be a little different. And so having that knowledge of the maintenance that's required on a certain set of machines, I think will be more valuable, but the maintenance is still just a pain in the ass just going through.
Yeah, let's use that. I was going to say
I don't know what that word means. Taxes.
both questions, and then we'll transfer into the next slide. Almost anything electronically that you run intermittently. You got a hairdryer, you plug it in. Well, maybe Chris and I don't, but like you got a hairdryer, you plug it in, you run it occasionally. Okay, your Bitcoin miner is going to get plugged in, and unless it fails, it's going to run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and not just a little bit, right? Thousands of RPMs a minute. It's going to sit there and run. And to know that that machine can sit there and run for 3 to 5 years is just amazing. And then, I think that was a really good analogy. The smaller the scale, the longer the life. If you got one baby to take care of, you'll probably keep it cleaner. It'll probably take care of it longer. And then something that I think at Compass, where we have a chance, we have a pretty large platform, we could talk about it more. I don't think we do a good enough job of talking about the business side of Bitcoin mining economics. A lot of us might be familiar with residential or with commercial real estate. You've got an apartment building, you invested in that, and now you get the tax benefit of writing off that depreciating asset at the same time that it's actually appreciating and you're taking in income. That same thing can apply. The hardware doesn't always appreciate at the same scale that an apartment building would, but there are tremendous tax advantages to operating a Bitcoin mine when you're running a business. So let's segue to the next slide. Control boards and power compatibility, control board swaps and upgrades, PSU compatibility and failures. I do think we had a little bit of overlap in the first segment, but let's leave it all on the field. We've got the audience here. We've got them online. Adam and Chris are with us. We're going to get Tatum a date. Let's do what we can to bring some value. So Tatum, when we think back to these two topics when we were planning tonight, what else did we want to discuss that we can draw some expertise from Eli?
Well, Eli's actually taught me most of what I know. I credit all of my mining knowledge to him and Neil Galloway. Shout out Neil in the back right there. But Eli taught me about the power codes and was going to ask him to because power, if you have an incompatible power supply, that's something you can see in your miner log. So what would you look for in your miner log for a power error?
Well, yeah, with the S19 series, I guess there's just two basic kinds you get. There's like power voltage cannot meet target, which means the PSU is probably cooked. I mean, there's no firmware in your way out of that one. But then whenever it says power version error, most of the time it's about selecting the right firmware. And one of the problems with S19s is that the firmware comes in two pieces. You have like a baseline kernel with the SD card that goes into it, and then you have the UE firmware that kind of builds over the top of it. So if the kernel component's like messed up, then whenever you try to load in the user interface portion of it, it'll update the firmware and all that, but it won't fix the piece that's broken that's keeping the compatibility from working. So you'll get the same error over and over.
Yeah, it's like a death cycle kind of.
Yeah, and like you'll try different ones, and no matter what you put on it, it just doesn't work. And it's just because that part in the kernel is compromised. So
I wanted to include, I couldn't find any logs to actually include. Like I was looking for very specific errors to include some slides, but didn't have that much luck on it. But what would something say like the 0x codes that with power supplies? You've explained those to me, and I still do not understand them.
yeah, it's kind of simple. So like basically the firmware has a
I just got cooked, dog. Holy crap.
I I'm just saying. Okay, so your firmware's got a set of hex tables like 0x7 1, 0x7 2, whatever that are compatible. And then the EEPROM of the hashboard also has those 0x7x for the S19 series codes. So the firmware says if the firmware detects that it has a PSU of like 0x7 1, it's the APW 12.12.15a, and then the firmware will say, okay, that 0x7 1 code is compatible, so it keeps going. Because the entire job of the firmware is to make sure that the compatibility of like the configuration you have is good. Do you have 3 of the same hashboard? Do they have the same frequencies like in the tables of them? Does it have a PSU that can run? Does it have a control board that works? And then does it have enough fans? So it's cross-checking constantly between different table values, and they're in hexadecimal. So yeah, you can learn to read it pretty fast and say, oh, that's the version F power supply or what have you.
Awesome. So are you saying that if you were to say that you were to just completely replace a hashboard in an Antminer, which has 3 hashboards, say all of them are BHB 42601s, and you replace it with a 42601, could that still have some sort of issue with the compatibility?
Yeah, you can run into a problem. Let's say that you get one out of like a 96 terahash miner, right? Those are lower bin chips. So in the EEPROM, it's going to want to run at 505 megahertz. And then for the other 2, they're going to want to run at 545. And that is going to cause conflicts. You can sometimes cheat it, but sometimes it gives you these weird like serial stamp doesn't work errors and things like that. So yeah, your performance may be kind of up and down. The same thing can happen if you take too high of a bin chip and put it on the hashboard, because when the ASIC register gets to that point, you've got one chip outperforming the rest of them so much that it pollutes the data for what the rest of the responses should be.
So all this to say is if you are trying to swap a PSU or a control board, definitely do some consultation. I'll do it for free 99 just to save you the hassle. Or I could just like give you some hints and let you figure it out if you're wanting to go on an adventure. But I've been down that road and it sucks. So, but yeah, hit me up if you have questions. Eli also too, I'm sure.
Well, I feel like with the microphone problems, the online audience might not be getting this, and you guys have demonstrated proof of work. But to 2 points there, when he's like, "Hit me up," I'll do it for free 99. If you're a beginner, this is a great room for you to be in. We all want to help. If you're an operator at scale and you need peers who understand your pain that you can bounce ideas off of, this is a great room to be in. We're here and we all want to help. So I certainly value that. I appreciate that there's a guy in the back row who was able to bob and weave over to the left. You guys heard me open with hot jobs and talk about helping people find jobs is truly something that I enjoy. I'm passionate about it. I really care. I got 5 kids at home, right? It matters to me, people being able to provide for their family. In the back row is one of my closest friends, Neil Galloway. And Neil actually got me my job at Compass Mining. So it's amazing to see you sitting here. Neil is the head of operations for Block Matrix. They're a massive Bitcoin mining operator. Neil lives right here in Denver. His son, Skylar, works for us, works for Compass Mining at the warehouse. Neil, I love you, brother. Thank you for being here at tonight's meetup. Okay, we're running through the slides. I know I've got some stuff to give away, and hopefully we'll have a few more questions at the end. But we're getting into our last slide here. So you guys better, when you're in show business, you got to do stretch, right? Stretch. So don't wear them out too much. You guys are both experts, so kind of know your audience and poke around and see different levels to discuss this conversation. But diagnostics and log reviews. So I'm a pretty lay user of Bitcoin miner home. I run an S9 and an S19. I remember a first conversation with both Adam and Neil. I think you both hit me up with some of these conversations about how well did I know my hardware, and I still haven't learned hardware that exceptionally well. But I'm not looking at logs for my hardware. When do I need to? And let's just get into this topic: reading and interpreting logs. How do I do that? When do I need to?
I realize now I probably could have at least just shown what a log looks like. In fact, I'll put a recording in the space members chat, which you'll only get to see if you're a space member. But on your miner user interface, if we're talking about like Antminers is my default that I go to. On the lower left side, you see miner log, and then you see what one of my friends calls the matrix. It's just a bunch of lines of bunch of scary words and abbreviations and numbers. But once you kind of have an idea of what you're looking at, it's pretty simple. Your logs are going to be telling you everything about what the miner is actually doing. It's going to show you step by step with timestamps of it booting up, of it tuning the chips on each hash board to a certain frequency. It's going to show you it checking all the fans. It'll show you what the fans were registering at when they did it. It'll show you if it gets too hot and it stops mining. It'll tell you stop mining, temperature too high. It's very intimidating because it's very long and very ugly, but it's super simple once you kind of have an idea of what you're looking for. Are we allowed to take questions?
Of course.
Okay, what's up?
Quick question. So, at some of these sites that you work at, are these logs aggregated in a central place, or are you actually physically going to the miner itself and analyzing the log from that?
So the way that most of our sites are set up is that we have a miner management software that will read every miner online, and it'll tell you all the basics. And one of the main ones that we look at is the hash rate. And if we can filter hash rate, say that okay, let's sort from 0 to 100 or whatever, and we can go in and see individually which miners have 0 hash rate. We can remotely go into those miners through their IP address and look at those individual logs. So we do have to still go into each individual miner, but we set it up on our network to where we can do that relatively remotely. We don't, in the early stages of setting up a facility, sometimes we will need to be like next to the miner, hooked into the same distribution switch to actually get to that miner. But once everything is operational, we're able to see that from wherever we need to.
And is that log aggregating software? Is that like proprietary to Compass or
No, the logs are proprietary for the miner that you're using, and then there's several other miner management softwares that people use. Like Foreman, for instance, is a common one where you register for an account, and then you can basically create like a site map, basically put in all the miners that you have at a facility, and you can segregate those off however you want to. You can create a map of each container, stuff like that. But it's all routing to the same proxy, basically. You would really enjoy, I need to show you all the intricacies of it. I feel like you would really like it based on what we've talked about. Hey, Eli, will you explain the steps that logs go through when a miner's booting up? Like what it checks for and everything?
The S19 series, I guess, yeah, it was really hard to paraphrase sort of whatever without a log up there, but basically it goes through and it checks like the EEPROM data inside of the hash board. So it'll open each one up and say, okay, what kind of hash board is it? How many chips per voltage domain, this and that. It gets all the identities out of it. And then it'll check the fans, make sure the machine's even cool enough to continue to run. And then after it checks the fans, it's going to, the modern ones, they do a power check. So it'll basically bump the voltage up to like 15 or whatever the max of the PSU is, check the full output, and then it'll go back down, and it'll release like that power version. So it takes like 2 minutes for the newer ones. But then after that, it goes through and it checks every chain, every hash board to make sure it has enough chips on each. Then if it does, it begins to set frequencies per chip. That's for the Antminer ones.
And so you'll see on like S19J Pros, when it searches for the ASICs, it'll say chain 0, find 126 ASIC 0 times, which means the zeros throw you off until you realize it's just starting from 0. But that means, okay, that board is good. Chain 1, find 126 ASICs 0 times. Okay, good. Chain 2, find 105 ASICs. What? Then it's going to try it a couple more times, and then it'll tell you, hey, we only found 105 ASICs on chain 2, which means that that hash board, there's usually something wrong at that 105th ASIC to where it's not bridging over to the 106th one and so on.
I was I mentioned earlier running an S9 and an S19 at home that I actually need to start using past tense. I feel like I'm bullish. We have just moved. We live on a small family farm in Kansas. We used to raise a designer breed of miniature pigs. House needed a lot of maintenance, and I looked at spending money to improve the maintenance, roof, siding, windows, gutters, borrowing against home equity to do that work, or looking at what I really wanted to do, and that was to deploy my equity into Bitcoin. So we're selling our house so that we can buy more Bitcoin. So I had to unplug the miners to not scare off the realtor and folks. But in my garage, I ran an S9, which someone referenced, as the older tank. And you could have cut the data cable, but that S9 would have just kept running and making heat in the basement. But by the time I plugged in my S19, we had an internet outage, and I thought something had happened in the power. No, I was surprised to find out that my S19 was smart enough to know that when it lost internet, that it stopped hashing and the power consumption and heat came way down. They're smart machines. They're getting smarter. You can install software that you can use to monitor them remotely, to operate them remotely. So they're not dumb machines.
Kind of. Sometimes they are. Depends on how we're feeling the day. But yeah, the one thing I do like to say is kind of contrary to what he's saying, but it's a bigger picture of like what a miner actually does. It couldn't tell you the day of the week if it wanted to. All it does is hash SHA-256 as fast as it possibly can. So they are smart machines, but they have their limits. They know what they're made to do, and if they cannot do it perfectly, they're going to say, hey, I need a repair. And then Tatum and Eli have to come do a repair.
Don't let them come to do a repair at your house. Yes, sir. Thank you.
I was just kind of curious on some of the numbers. So, like, if you have a 5 megawatt installation, how many miners is that? When you buy the miners, you also then buy a bunch of boards, a bunch of fans. So that you have.
Yeah, whenever you have like something like a 5 megawatt farm, you definitely want extra parts, but not just for your miners. You want some redundant PDUs, you want redundant switches, you want extra Ethernet cables. But yeah, it does factor into that. So for 5, yeah, well, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Each machine draws a certain amount of wattage, so I would have rudimentary said that it's about 300 machines per megawatt, but it's really going to vary in that range. So 1,500 machines for 5 megawatts.
I think a megawatt is usually 300, 360 with current machines about.
Yeah, so you definitely want cases of fans, you want cases of PSUs, like you need all of that on hand. And then as that starts, you can, but that's a dice roll. Like I've had some of the worst experiences of my life being told to take reclaimed fans. It has never once worked out because they got a finite number of rotations to them. So you pull a fan off an old machine, you put on a new one in one can, you finish everything in that can, all the fan repairs are done. You go do all the fan repairs in another, and then you come to find out there's like 30 or 40 down in the can you just came from. So yeah, it's not worth it in some cases.
The reason you would stock up on replacement parts is you've invested all this infrastructure, 5 megawatts, a building, you bought the miner. Your expectation is that piece of equipment is on the entire time. And if there's a $5, $7, $12, $20 fan that you can replace, and now that machine is back up and running versus you had to find it, you had to order it, it got shipped in. That's why you would stock up on some number of those replacement parts.
Yeah, we usually keep like an abundance of fans on our sites because those are, like I said earlier, the ones that are going to go down sooner rather than later. So like we usually keep at the minimum like 100 on hand.
Not every mining company is different. And again, this isn't a commercial for Compass, but fan repairs are. We offer a hosting solution where you can own 3 machines, he can own 30. So we serve a variety of sizes customers, but you own your piece of equipment and we operate it for you. Fan failures are so common that we got smart guys who can do math. We figured out it was more economical for us to do a free fan replacement for you versus ask you for permission to replace it, wait the time, charge you, and then go back. And if the fan fails, we replaced it. That's a more economical decision for us than to ask you to pay for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay? That was a great question. Please.
What's like the blended average on what are they targeting?
We usually talk about like 98% on grid. Yeah.
Now that also adjusts with curtailment,
Yeah.
depending on what kind of power agreements the facilities have. Because sometimes, like in Texas with ERCOT, you will be incentivized to donate your power back to the grid. Not really donate, but sell it back to the grid for credits. So that's obviously going to put a dent in your uptime, but the facility is still making money in a different way. And that's also balancing the grid overall, because the Bitcoin miners are the only ones that can consume and shut off that consumption that quickly. So,
All right, guys, I think we're getting to the point where we can successfully. Oh, please, sorry. I love questions from the audience, especially from the guy who owns the place, right?
Building off what you said, Curtis, like, how do you guys factor in the time to diagnose with many of these repairs? Because it sounds like there are a lot of things that could go wrong, and to the economic standpoint, you could be tinkering for a while before you find the problem. When is it better to just say, screw it, I'm going to put in a new machine, and that's the best thing to do right now versus try and actually solve the problem?
Eli and I both have kind of our own personal rules, I guess. Him more on the board side of things before he declares like the board unrepairable. But for me, like if we're looking at just bolt-on repairs at a facility, it's pretty easy once you've done enough to pinpoint what's wrong. And if you swap out a PSU and it was the wrong one, okay, let me try this one, and that doesn't work, okay, I'm going to figure that out later. But usually a bolt-on repair will take us maximum 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how deep we have to go with. If it's a control board, we have to reflash it and stuff like that. But fan time, we actually got into a competition of fan swap times. We were doing those 400 something in Oklahoma, and that we ended up getting down to about like 2 minutes on that or something like that. But yeah, if it takes me longer than 10 minutes and I'm not getting any traction, I'm gonna figure something else out. Look at it later.
Eli, I hate on a Twitter space when the they're like, hey, did anyone else want to come up? You really have been one of the more intellectually impressive gentlemen. You understand Bitcoin mining from lots of layers of complexity. We asked you to be our guest here tonight. Was there anything that you left on the field? Was there anything that you wanted to make sure that we discussed before we move on and start to wrap up?
I kind of like where Tatum was going with it. From like a tech standpoint a little bit, I think you're trying to deliver the most value with the time that you have, right? So like if you have a control board issue, you can fix 100% of those with swapping the control board and moving on, but that's going to cost the company a lot more money in the long run and this and that. So I look at the value of my time versus the value of the part. If it's a control board and they say, okay, if I put an hour into this, like how much is that versus what it costs to just replace this thing? So you want to be the least invasive that you possibly can and the most directed, kind of operate from first principles and just be direct with it, You know what systems are connected to what after doing this for long enough. So you're not replacing PSUs if you see certain errors or whatever. It's really just about just going in with the least invasive method possible as quickly as you can, saying if it's not this highest probability 1, 2, or 3 things, at that point my time outweighs the cost of the part and I'm going to move on. Most of them, really. I mean, yeah, because you have different stuff that happens. Yeah, you can visit a 1 megawatt site once a week. Most of the sites are going to be like 5 to 10 megawatts. And you really do want somebody kind of full-time there because there's filters and all that other stuff that has to be dealt with.
Are you answering that, Adam?
No, I have a question. This conversation's been pretty Bitmain focused, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, unfortunately, that's like the main thing that I operate on. It's not my choice.
Is that because you don't do a lot of repairs on Lux miners? Is that indicative of them being more robust? Is there one model, one brand versus the other? If you had to bet, you had to put stats on it.
What's my...
Like 100 units, which would
What's miners and Avalons are kind of less interesting to talk about because there's way fewer compatibility issues, and generally the swaps just work. Yeah, so there's
I
not,
think, yeah,
there's not-
yeah. Honestly, it's,
Well, there's just not as much diagnostics that go into it. Like you have like the H6OS and the H616 the control board files, and that's pretty much it for anything modern.
Well, nice. So what about the hash board? You mentioned the bit name, right? Like the different model of hash board.
Yeah.
96. Are they more ubiquitous with what's miner? Are they a lot easier to swap out and consolidate if you have one bad board?
No, I think it's definitely the same as far as consolidation goes. It's just the fact that the hash boards aren't really that replaceable. You know, you can go on Zeus and get one for $1,300, but you know, it's not really something you would want to order as a spare part.
but like you said, what's miners have historically just been tanks, and
Yeah.
I think you actually showed like one of your boards was overheating after a couple of years, and it was just caked, like it was just trucking through all that. So, and also what's miners with their errors, they will just straight up tell you what's wrong, like right on the front. Like you don't have to go looking or anything. It'll say, you know, here's a number, and that means that this fan is bad.
To the first question about a full-time tech, I think I would add some perspective. It values on the level of investment that you've made. If you've got a 1 megawatt, 300 machines, a brand new generation equipment, and they were $10,000, $12,000 each, $4,000 each, right? Versus if you're deploying 100 S9s that you got off of a buddy, I think it depends on the level of investment that you made. If you're invested heavily, you want those machines running all the time, and them running is probably more economical than you not having a paid tech there. And to Adam's point, Adam's business with upstream data, they do a lot of work, but they primarily serve an oil and gas customer who are mining with stranded or flared gas out in the oil field, and there's a gen set that's sitting there working. It's rougher conditions than warehouse mining, and I do think there's some historical knowledge that the Bitmain machines don't stand up as well, that you've identified that the other manufacturers' machines are more robust than that. So I appreciate you putting us on point, Adam, and that was a great question, sir.
And one more thing about what's miners versus ant miners, if for whatever reason a PSU explodes, a what's miner one is a lot louder. Just letting you know that. That'll change you.
Chris, I'm gonna put you on the spot, but I'm gonna welcome you to the conversation. It's not often that we have a manufacturer in the room. I think most people who are familiar in Bitcoin mining recognize that there is one dominant manufacturer, and others are still somehow having to compete. But you guys definitely compete. What do you guys do to design for robustness so that the machines just simply last longer? Is there anything you can share with the audience?
Our designs would follow a more conservatively logic movement from each model, so we're not trying to push too hard on what's new in tech. So whereas our competitor is doing 15, 13 joules right now, we understand that the machines are in really rough conditions. They're in places that are hot. The data centers, as nice as they are, the best operator you have, they're still it's something the machine is going to have a lot of trouble with. So we try to design more simplistically so that the machine can run at maybe 5, 10 degrees Celsius higher. You bring up what's miner, we have a lot in common with them. And now that we're here on this side of the world, we have great press releases with Hive, Clean Spark, Cypher Mining, Stronghold Digital. They've all tested, put on paper, from their CEOs and executives that our machines run the best on their sites. So I hope people can learn more about Canaan, but we do have a lot in common with what's miner, and we've been called workhorses, our machines. So it's that design that we use from model to model. I think it's helping us stay really robust in this segment.
I also want to point out that Canaan manufactured the first ASIC miner, and that's a huge deal. So that's don't fade Canaan.
I think this is one of the things that we're building here. Again, this is our 4th month, and thank you everyone for showing up. But I think we're building a room where these robust discussions can be had, where the manufacturer can be here, hear from what's going on in the field, also give a point of view. So I'm very thankful for this. as we're wrapping up, I do like to end on time. We generally want to try to leave the building at 9. That's not a hard rule, but that's that we want to let everybody get out of here. So we're going to end with 45 minutes of networking. There's coolers with beer and water and seltzer. They've left leftovers. Don't be afraid to pack a doggy bag. We had a light bulb that we'll bring some to-go boxes next time in case you want to take something. But special thanks to our caterers, Silver Spoons Catering. They also run Easy Entrees, which is a meal delivery kit. This slide right here, you guys already found it, but I believe this is train directions. I wanted to share this for the folks who are visiting online. Denver is an incredibly easy town to travel into, so if this meetup is interesting to you, you can land at DIA and you can be down here in 45 minutes, bring a bag. It's pretty easy to get here. And just as I was about to transition to the next slide, I want to do one more thank you to the audience, and that's for my friend Tim in the back row. So Tim is part of our global logistics team. He goes to school here at KU. Goes to school here in Colorado. He is an academic advisor, but he is also at this meetup my left and right hand man. And Tim, I continue to be very thankful for your help with this meetup. Couple more things. It is primarily giveaway time, and then the last slide we'll talk about next month. This is a game. It's called Shamery. This is a card game which would help you learn or teach about Bitcoin mining. I have 5 copies here with me. I'm happy for you to have one. If you don't have one already, we gave out 5 copies last month. If this is just simply a gift to you from us to you, we actually like this so much. Our founders said, hey, go buy 50 of these, give them away. It's just seriously something he's interested in. We actually give you a free game as well if you purchase. Just use code Shamery. Last month, we're in the seat that Eli is sitting in was Rob Warren. Rob is a darling of Bitcoin mining, is a darling of the space. He lives here in Denver, and he's a published author. He's written this book, The Bitcoin Miner's Almanac, and I've also brought a handful of copies to give away to you tonight. So if you are looking into Bitcoin mining, if you're not familiar with this book or with this author, it's a very informed read, and this is just a free copy. I did stick a couple Compass stickers in a magnet inside as a bookmark, but I think I've got 6 copies of this, and so literally just a free gift. And then I brought 2 pieces of literature. I didn't bring enough for everyone, but these are both kind of my brainchilds. I'm always thankful for Adam and his compliments. I brought a few copies of this, Building on Bitcoin. It's a site development guide. So I spent 2.5 years taking copious notes about how to build Bitcoin mining locations, and I put it into a magazine. I thought I had enough for a book. What I had enough was for a good magazine. So my pleasure to give that. And then this is a piece of marketing material that we take to conferences. You can get started in Bitcoin mining at any level. You don't need this information to shop with Compass. Use this to let you set some parameters. Hey, I can go get started with 1 machine, or I can build a whole facility. So these are our gift to you tonight. Please just come up here to the stage and grab one on your way out. Next month is March 13th. That is my birthday. My wife is convinced she's going to come to Denver to join me. She's like, I'm not sure I'm going to get in your suitcase, but I could have a cute redhead here with me next month. Hey, listen, in case she's watching on Twitter, I'm staying married, all right? Next month we're gonna have a little something new. We're gonna have the handsome man all the way down to the right. We're gonna rotate. He's gonna be here in this hot seat. He's gonna run MC. And Tatum lives here in Denver. I've been traveling into Kansas or from Kansas to get this meetup off the ground. So Tatum's gonna be moving over into this role. And we did a little bit of arm twisting, but we're going to invite our friend Vishnu McIncherry to be the primary guest, and we're going to bring in an outside expert. Vishnu works for Compass. He runs global logistics as well as about 3 other departments inside of Compass, including our massive service center here in Denver. Vishnu has a lot to bring. He's also a tremendous personality, a very friendly guy, and has also grown to be a good friend. I think that's something that stands out, is that Bitcoin draws good people. Because it's a cyclical nature, it has a tendency to wash out bad actors. If you're just here because of the bad things, for profit, for number go up, you're not going to last long. But if you've discovered that Bitcoin is freedom money and you're here for the long, that's the type of people that Bitcoin draws in. So that's one of those, one of the elements of Vishnu. I look forward to you being on stage next month. So, guys, that's it for our meetup. Thank you very much for being here. Would you please give our guests a hand?